All right, welcome guys here to our debut of Modern Monsters podcast. We're here with Ryan. We're here with Dakota, who are friends of the channel. You guys know them from any live streams we've done or in the comments of any of my videos. And today we're here with a special guest, Mattsquatch Presents, aka Matt, aka Mattsquatch. He goes by those names, and his channel has over 22,000 subscribers as of right now, and you know. A lot of videos, 257 uploads as of today, and so
is it that many?
Yeah, we got quite a few on your channel. That's more than mine, man. 3.6 million video views.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So we are happy to have Matt here today to talk about Bigfoot stuff, in general. We have a lot of things we're going to cover. We might have some questions later on. We have some stories we're going to start off with, and just general insight and conversation that you guys will probably find pretty interesting. If you guys don't know, everyone kind of knows what Bigfoot is. Everyone knows who he is, what he's about for the most part in the general, but you might not know the specifics. How to track a Bigfoot, how to defend yourself against a Bigfoot, possibly. Stuff like that, and even more in-depth stuff. So we'll get into that. So we're gonna start out with a story that Dakota has from his grandma, I believe, right?
Great-grandfather.
Grandfather.
Yeah. Now, don't hype up Bigfoot too much, because this story is actually a little different from that. And the story's 100 years old. Keep that in mind. So not all the details are completely precise. It's passed through generations to me. So basically, this was in the 20s or 30s, we believe. And my great-grandfather was a hunter, and that's how he fed his family. He hunted. He sold pelts. He sold meat. He fed his family the meat he hunted. And he would often night hunt, because that's when a lot of the little critters like raccoons and possums are most active, and you can just shine up a lantern into a tree and the eyes will shine down on you, and you know exactly where to shoot. Now, that's illegal now, so don't do it. But that's how they fed themselves, so just the times. And basically, it was late at the night, it was pitch dark, and him and a buddy were night hunting. And now they both had shotguns. He had a full-length double barrel, and his friend had a little sawed-off. I can assume, since they were hunting raccoons, they were probably loaded with birdshot, and that's important later on. But they were walking through the woods, and they heard a crunch above them. So they held the lantern up to see what was up in the tree, and it was not a raccoon. It was black, probably about 7 feet long on all fours, and menacing. And it started growling at them from above them. So his friend had the brilliant idea to point his little birdshot 12 gauge up at this beast and pull the trigger. That's not a good idea, because of what happened next. The animal jumped down onto their 2 hunting dogs, and his words, picked one of them up with hands and broke it in 2. And the other one, it killed by severing its spine with its teeth. Now, hunting dogs they're not little beagles. They're big, tough mutts, and they're bred to take beatings. And the animal in this tree that jumped down on top of them killed each of them without even thinking about it. Then it turned its attention to my great-grandfather's friend.
Oh shit!
It reached out with its claws, and as he tried to turn around and run away, it grabbed the back of his shirt. Meanwhile, remember, it's full of birdshot at this point, and it's still willing to fight. It's not running anywhere. So, the story gets a little fuzzy here, but I'm pretty sure this is about the time when my great-grandfather empties his gun into it, and it's unbothered. It's still not quite at his friend yet, so he takes this opportunity to rip a fence post out of the ground and beat the animal over the head and spine until it died. They cleaned the animal so they could carry it back, and they took it back, and they took a look at it in the morning, and it was not a bear. It wasn't a mountain lion. Whatever it was something they had no idea of its existence. My great grandmother was terrified of it. She was a Salagi woman, and she wanted nothing to do with it. She stayed in the cabin. They described it as being pitch black with a wolf-like head. It had a long tail. Its claws were as long as a finger, and it didn't seem to fit any description of any animal that they knew of, even from books. So they took it to a university somewhere in Tennessee. This takes place in around the border of Tennessee and West Virginia, by the way. They take it to a university and they try to have it studied. The only response they got from the university is that the animal was a hunter and to stay out of the woods. They never got the body back. They never found out where the body went. But it's definitely, the story's not going to die, even without any evidence. So I just wanted to know your take on this, Matt, because I know you get a lot of stories.
That's that is absolutely fascinating. My first reaction from the location and the general description is that it was what people call a dog man. A lot of people see kind of like what Ryan's encounter was. Now, I know they said it was on all fours, but the dog head, and there are reports of dog men being on all fours, and I kind of treat them as a separate category, but I've talked about them a little bit on my channel. There are these giant wolf encounters where people see these giant, like 300 or 400 pound black wolves. They look like a black German Shepherd wolf, but like, as big as an elk, and I don't know if they're an offshoot of Dogman or if they're related or if they're some other kind of cryptid or something. Because when you first started telling a story, I was thinking like a melanistic mountain lion. And I know in the very southern part of the United States, occasionally they'll get a jaguar, but not in Tennessee, West Virginia. That's very, that's certainly very frightening. Almost sounds like a devil dog, a dog man variant. Like I said, people do talk about seeing the dog man or the Rougarou or whatever you want to call it, the Beast of Bray Road, the Michigan dog man. They do talk about him being on all four quite a bit. Before you said it had the head of a dog, I was thinking a lot of people report Bigfoot being on all fours and some varieties being clawed. But my guess is this is some kind of a variant or some kind of an offshoot of this dogman creature people are seeing.
I mean, whatever it was, it's definitely been reported by other people in the area. If you think just a few hours away, there's the LBL, and all through the Appalachian Mountains, there's reports of these things. What creeps me out the most is the response they got from the university. They called it a hunter. They didn't say it was a black bear or a panther. They didn't even try to make up an explanation. They just called it a hunter. And even if they did say it was a panther, like you mentioned, melanistic mountain lions, there's actually never been an example of a melanistic mountain lion.
I know.
The only melanistic big cats we have in North America are jaguars. And for them to be that far north would be crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty much, you're exactly right. That's exactly what I was thinking. Although they do get mountain lions in states that reportedly don't have mountain lions. They'll wander over great distances.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But to be all black and they're not supposed to be there. And it's funny how the mountain lions don't read signs and maps and guides to wildlife of Maryland. But the whole shooting it with birdshot thing, I can imagine if they were, because I used to talk to my grandfather, who's actually from Maryland, by the way, and he grew up there. He was born in 1920s, early 20s before he passed away. And my friend I remember in mid 90s, my friend had a grandfather who was in his 90s at that point, like 97 or 98. So he had to be born in the late 1800s. And he used to talk about growing up in the South, Alabama, Texas. His family moved around a lot. And he used to talk about every single night that they went coon hunting. Because that was just what you did. You grabbed your lantern back then and your crappy flashlights and your single shot shotguns and your 22s, and you went out and you shot possums, you shot snakes, you shot raccoons, and that's what you did. And you brought them home and you skinned them and mom cooked them the next day. So yeah, it's very common, and most people do hunt with a small caliber. Especially, you got to remember back then in the, you said it was probably like in the 20s, right?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, so you got to think of the Great Depression era back then. Large centerfire rifles, you wouldn't, you'd shoot a poor raccoon with a 30-06 and there'd be half your raccoon would be gone. And so yeah, bird shot because you could shoot birds, you could shoot turkeys, you could shoot whatever you wanted. And back then, hunting was just take my gun and go in the woods and see whatever you could find. I don't see them be that heavily armed. I don't see them. It's not like nowadays where you can go get a 1,000 lumen flashlight. It was probably pretty primitive lanterns and primitive flashlights going out there. It's very interesting what you said, but they kind of waited till daylight to see what they had. But yeah, it definitely sounds like it's some kind of offshoot of Dogman, and that's terrifying. I can't even imagine the helpless feeling of putting shotgun blasts into this thing and it's like not even flinching, which is common with Dogman. People do report that shooting them and it not having a lot of effect. It's almost like with Dogman though, people shoot at them or hit them with a car or hit them over the head, and it is having an effect, but they're just so tough that they're kind of like they don't know they're dead yet. They're so wounded that they're going to die, but it's not stopping them from attacking.
And it's kind of similar to like a bear per se, in terms of like if you were to shoot a bear in the head, it's charging you. It's not going to stop it. The adrenaline of that bear is going to keep going until it's killed. It's whatever, and it might eventually die of its injuries, or whatnot. But it's still, it's not going to kill it immediately, and especially if it's got a thick hide, that too.
Yeah, and you're talking
I
bird
imagine
shot.
if we ever do get keep going.
No, I was going to say especially bird shot it. It's enough to where it might bleed out and hurt it, but it's interesting how you really got to think people tougher back then. Because if my buddy was getting mauled by this thing and I emptied my gun, I'd probably run away, to be quite honest. This guy went and ripped off a fence post and beat it to death. That's just... People are crazy.
No. It's a whole new level of savage right there.
Yeah, I imagine if we ever do get a body of a Dogman, we'll find fight packs on those that make boar look like paper mache. They got to be tough.
Incredibly tough.
Well, that's a really interesting story. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Now I got kind of an interesting question for you, Matt. Just kind of, we kind of talked about this on one of my live streams, and we were kind of having this debate. And obviously there's no fact on this. It's kind of what evidence we have and an opinion based on experience. But the debate we were having was, do you think that Bigfoots travel in packs, or are they solitary creatures? Because they're, it would kind of seem to me that they travel in some kind of numbers, since they are reproducing and they have cubs or whatever, infants or whatever you want to call it. But it would seem to me that they travel in some kind of pack. Do you have any idea, like, in your opinion, or what do you think about the numbers of that size of pack? And
well, it's all conjectures, and if you look at a lot of Native American beliefs going back, when they talk about the Sasquatch, and very interestingly, it's not what I'm saying, but they call them people. They say the Sasquatch people, the Bigfoot people, the hairy man people. They call them hairy man, wild man people, and we tend to, have a different view of what people are. Unless you're walking upright and have an iPhone, you're not a human being these days,
Right.
Versus them, they traded with them. They had a language. They would hunt in one area, or they would hunt during the day. The Sasquatch would hunt at night. We don't go out at night. They don't go out during the day. That part of the canyon is theirs. This part of the canyon is ours. You see that time and time again with Native American histories. And if you look at primatology, and you look at anthropology, the study of humans, cultural and physical, you discover that family groups are generally how we are organized, and friend groups and everything else. And what happens in great ape societies, and even other predators, even if you look at non-human mammals that are highly intelligent, like dolphins and killer whales and wolves, and you look at a lot of primates and you look at a lot of humans, there tends to be a family group. It would be like an alpha, like if you look at silverback gorillas or you look at a chimpanzee, there's a leader. Sometimes there's subordinate males, which could be a brother to the alpha. or like a brother to the alpha female, betas, so to speak. And a lot of times they'll have a harem. There'll be 2 or 3 breeding females. From what I've heard from a lot of habituation encounters, though, from a lot of people, is that they tend to be a lot like I'm getting some little bit of echo, guys. It's kind of annoying. I don't know what that's from. But from what I've seen and heard, is it really seems like they organize themselves kind of like we do, where you'll have mom and dad and then a couple of young ones. And it seems to me that the females tend to stay with the family groups longer, from what I've heard, just for protection, because females are always at risk and always the prize. But when the males reach adolescence, when they become teenagers and they have a lot of, pent up rage, just think how stupid teenage boys are and humans, you picture them 7-8 feet tall and 500 pounds. There's all that testosterone and whatever else is running through them. They want to get out and hunt. They want to get out and breed. They want to prove themselves. And I honestly think that when you hear the vast majority of Bigfoot encounters, I think a lot of them really are the young ones. They're out on their own for the first time. So I think, and it's all conjecture. Like I said, from what people have said, from eyewitness encounters, from what the natives believe, from primatology, from studying anthropology, yeah, they seem to be in family units. And there are reports of 2 or 3 seemingly smaller males getting together, probably younger ones, kind of like how young men hang out in groups and gangs and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely think that they run in family units. Now, you could have an old angry male, you could have the loner, you could have the lone wolf, you could have a young male that perhaps isn't as big as strong as anything else, so he goes to a territory where there is no other females and he just lives his life by himself. And I think the big alphas and the older females, you'll rarely see unless you're threatening them or you stumble upon them. I think it's always the younger ones that, tap on windows and look in windows and cause mayhem and go steal stuff, I don't think that's the rule. I think that's just generalizing. I think, I think they definitely do organize themselves into like a family unit.
So
if that answers questions.
And that's good insight, because it kind of ties into my next part of the question. And Ryan, you can probably tap in on this one too, because you know quite a bit as well.
Okay.
And it's something that I've always been curious about myself. Let's say there's these groups of Bigfoots, these families, and they have this area. How is it that they are so well able to, keep away from human contact? Because while we do have a lot of sightings, you could look at half of them and say, okay, those are questionable, probably are fake, half of them. And the real ones we got are so hard to, it's from a distance. You can't really get a good shot of these things. And, as many, people we have wandering in the woods with camera phones, I mean, everyone has a camera on them nowadays, How is it that they're able to just stay so well hidden?
Instinct, I would think. Bears and lions and even wolves and coyotes, they try to avoid us too. So these things have a higher intelligence than, wolves or coyotes, obviously. And they see us with guns. They see what we do. So I'm pretty sure they go out of their way to avoid us purposely. They know detection's a bad thing.
Have you heard of the pink Bigfoot experiment that was done by, I believe, the BFRO?
Yes.
Yeah, they had a guy dressed in a pink Bigfoot costume, and they put him in a pretty small area in the woods, and they told him to just sit there. And then they had a bunch of researchers go through the woods with cameras and just take pictures and try to find the pink Bigfoot. And they never did. And the guy in the costume said, "Oh yeah, they were 50 yards away from me. They walked right by me." So if there's something in the woods that's not pink and probably has a lot better instincts than a person, I imagine it'd be pretty easy for it to stay hidden.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, now, so assuming they would have a lot of human characteristics, in how similar they are to apes as well. And I don't know if apes have anything, but like when say a Bigfoot were to pass away, it gets old, it dies of injury, whatever, it dies. Do you think that they have a way of disposing the body? Maybe they bury it. I don't know, but how come we haven't found bones or a body? That's what I'm curious about.
There are a few good reasons. The practical reasons are Dying of natural causes, you rarely find cougar or bear or even deer, for that matter, bones. You'll find stuff hit by a hunter, or hit by a car, kind of a thing. But when it comes down to it, most animals, when they're getting old or they're getting sick or they're wounded, they want to go off someplace secluded because they don't want to be eaten alive. They want to go off somewhere where they can lick their wounds and rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to go as far away from hiking trails, from airports, from roads, from whatever they can. They're going to try to just go deep. And to be honest, it's a little morbid, but if you hear where police find dead bodies, where people go dump bodies in the woods and the deserts, sometimes it's a body will be there for 10 years, 100 yards from a hiking trail, but it's just over a really steep ridge that no one wants to walk over or go over or has no business, and it's a long time before someone goes over there, and it can be relatively close. Another thing in North America, especially in arboreal woods, where we're talking about lots of trees, pine trees, cedar trees, the soil tends to be very acidic, and the acidic soil breaks down bones really fast. And you couple that with ants and other bugs, and you couple that with ravens and scavengers and vultures and everything else, even an 800-pound dead Sasquatch within a week is going to be down to bones. Within 2 weeks is going to be scattered bones, and within a month you might find a bone or two, and then by the time snow falls and pine needles lay on top of it and leaves fall on top of it, within a couple years there's no trace of that, just because of the acidic soil. I also do think that there are different varieties of Bigfoots with different levels of veracity, that I do think sometimes they might eat their dead. I know that was very big with Neanderthals and early humans. And you got to think, if it's wintertime and you're trudging through 5 feet of snow to try to hunt deer, and it's cold out and it's a really harsh winter and you're trying to get everything, and your buddy dies and there's 800 pounds there, you're probably going to eat them, just from a practicality point of view. I mean, early humans did it. Neanderthals did it. People still around the world resort to cannibalism under extreme circumstances. So I think that there's a practicality there. A lot of other species do that too. If they're young guys and they're a carnivore, eventually they might eat their young, just because, especially if times are really rough. Also, I think that there are some signs in a lot of Native American stories of them burying their dead. So it could be, if times are plenty and they're a particularly sophisticated type of Sasquatch with a really well-developed frontal lobe and has that social connection, and they might bury their dead for that exact reason. They don't want to see their loved one get torn apart by carnivores or whatever. So that, I just, there's a good deal of them, but I don't think there's that many of them either. I mean, how many times do you? God, I've never seen a dead bear.
Right?
I've never seen. The only dead deer I've ever seen is where I know one was. You find its skull with the antlers cut off, and it was shot there.
Yeah, I've seen some dead deer, but other than that, I mean, here in Iowa, we don't have much for wooded areas. It's a lot of cornfields, so there's not a lot of places for those, animals to hide or go into secluded areas, because the areas that they do go into are usually hunting grounds. So they're easier to find here because we don't have, while we do have big wooded areas, most of the area is farmland. But I can understand, though, and that is what makes me so curious about it, is these things are likely far more intelligent than any other animal, that we can probably, at least mammal, other than a human. So they probably have a way of, what their instincts tell them to do, whether, like you said, they go off and be in secluded areas. I know that for a fact animals do that, cats, dogs, anything that's wild, they go off and they, die by themselves.
Right.
So it's very interesting to think about, just because, and the thing is that I also wonder is, you have all these areas around, not just the United States, but the world, where you have, we just call them Bigfoot, but there's a lot of subspecies that we, at least so we think, and you would think there would be, since they're, one's in California, Arizona, and we got some in, Brazil, Europe or whatever, all across the world, you have sightings of these things. So I think it's interesting to also think about just like the subspecies and maybe the difference in aggression levels between Bigfoots. I mean, do we have any reports ever of a Bigfoot being super aggressive, hurting people, killing people, anything like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. There's there's tons of reports. It's really funny how I've met a lot of people who claim to be seasoned Bigfooters and really into the subject, and then they just say something. Well, I've never heard of an aggressive Sasquatch encounter, and I'm like, have you been listening? I mean, there are reports of them trying to like haul people off, like scoop up a guy's wife right in front of the dude, or scoop up kids right in front of a mom, trying to take them off in the woods, or just like go take a look at the siege of Honabi, or the Ape Canyon incident, even Wes Germer's encounter from Sasquatch Chronicles,
or Duke's encounter.
Or even my encounter when I had a large rock thrown at me while I had a rifle in my hand. I would consider that fairly aggressive.
And I have heard of a lot of cases where they tend to throw rocks. Everything I've heard that where they a research team is out hunting for them or just trying to document them. It's a very common experience to have a rock thrown at you. That's something that they kind of like humans. They see that as a weapon, and that definitely is an attack.
Well, and you got to remember everything about Bigfoots that has been documented and from things I've experienced from other researchers who have seen them up close, everything about them is get close but not too close. Don't ever show yourself completely. Always leave something between you and them when it comes to humans. Very rarely does one ever, there are stories, but very rarely does one just take 5 big steps from behind a tree and is just standing in the middle of a field, broad daylight right in front of you. There are reports of that, and a lot of times it is for intimidation kind of thing. Or people see them like that, and maybe you caught the Bigfoot by surprise. They don't know you're there. But for the most part, even when people see them on infrared at night, they're still hiding behind a tree. It's pitch black out, and they're hiding behind a tree. And some people say maybe they think we can see as well as they do, and that's why they still hide even in the dark. But it always seems like they're really good at leaving a barrier or something in front of them, or behind a parked car, behind a house, behind a shed, behind a tree, behind a big bush. And a rock gives them a way to persuade you. And I think if they are very well hidden, maybe even feet, within 10 or 15 feet, where it could take one big step and reach out its arm and probably touch you, it would behoove them, if you don't know they're there, for them to throw a rock, maybe not even trying to hit you, freak you out. Hey, if I send this rock right by this guy's head, he's going to go running out of here. Or, yeah, hey, this hunter's getting really, whatever the Bigfoot's thinking, it's getting really close to my young. Or, damn it, we're out here hunting deer, me and my other Sasquatch buddy on the other side of this creek. And, here comes this dumb hunter human crunching around, making all this noise, scaring the deer away. We need to get this guy out of here. Throw a rock at him. Throw a stick at him. Throw acorns at him. It makes a good, easy standoff weapon. And it's not like they had to sharpen a spear or make an arrowhead or something that could be identifiable. If they throw a rock and a rock's on the ground, it just looks like a rock on the ground too. And
right.
It's very, there are rocks everywhere, and it really makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If they've got these huge giant hands and they're big giant creatures and they can throw rocks with precision, they probably even hunt certain small game with it.
Now, I feel like that's more of like a defensive aggression, though. You know what I mean? Like a defense. Do you think they would go out and I guess this would kind of tie in with their eating habits. Are they omnivores, vegetarians, mixed? Do you think they would go and hunt a human for protein? Because we see it with other animals. For example, horses, deer, for example, will eat birds or mice if they get the chance to, because they're lacking protein. And there's tons of videos on it where they'll just eat something alive off the ground because they're lacking protein. So, and I'm not sure what a Bigfoot diet would be. I would assume it'd be mostly berries, stuff around, vegetarian stuff. But you would assume that it would need some kind of form of protein. But would they ever attack a human, as in like trying to kill, like out of the blue? I mean, assuming they're not, rabid or anything like that.
Well, I would agree with you, but disagree with you at the same time. I think that yes, they are definitely omnivores. If you look at the human being gut and you look at most grade 8 species guts, we have a long and short intestine with a single chambered stomach. We're built a lot like a lion. Humans and bears and dogs are inherently carnivores. Our systems are designed. We have very high pH stomach acids. We are inherently designed to eat meat. But through the adaptation of through the millennia and the stomach flora, you know, like probiotics you hear, we have adapted ourselves to eat meat. Kind of like how bears are technically carnivores, but they have been very slowly adapted to eat berries and roots and whatever else they can come across because you can't always get meat. And I would assume that a Sasquatch is just like that too. And you got to remember, you take a pound of spinach, you get one of those nice big giant bags at Vaughn's of the pre-washed spinach. This big giant bag where if you put that in a bowl and you dump it in a bowl, it's a big giant mounding salad bowl of it. Look at the calories. That's like 70 calories. There's like nothing. And all those leaves of spinach you have to eat. But you can take like a deck of card size piece of meat and that's going to be 300 or 400 calories. So you got to think of the efficiency. And when it comes to ripe berries that have a lot of sugars in them and starches and certain other fruits and vegetables, you got to think that, you know, I did the calculations on it. If you think 8 foot tall, 800 pounds, it would be between 15 and 20,000 calories a day to keep one of these things moving. And if you look at the great ape species like gorillas that primarily eat vegetables, that's all they eat is leaves. They sleep 18 hours a day, and the rest of the time they're eating because it's such a low efficiency energy form that they have to be eating all the time. So and that's kind of what made human beings dominant in our evolution, if you believe in modern science, is that when we found protein, we realized it was such an efficient source of energy. Now, not that a modern human can eat only vegetables and different variety of things. We have vegetarians and we have vegans, and people can do just fine. And I think if they're coming across an apple orchard or mom's tomato garden or a peach tree, you know, something very high in sugar, yeah, they're going to sit there and eat those all the time. And you also got to think that they're going to, you know, if they're eating these peaches or these apples or whatever's going on, other animals are probably coming in too. Bonus, I'm going to hang out and eat apples until the deer comes in to eat one. Then I'm going to eat the deer. So, yeah, it would seem that they have a very, but to answer your question, I think that they do predate people. Bears do it. A lot of people don't realize. There was this one on the news the other day where a black bear killed and ate 2 people. Black bears do it. Grizzly bears do it. Mountain lions do it. Coyotes will do it if they can find somebody young enough. As much as everybody wants to romanticize as wolves as being harmless, which they generally are, if you're alone in the Arctic and there's a pack of wolves, they'll probably eat you. Polar bears do it. Bobcats will eat you if they had to, or at the very least aggressively defend themselves. Anything that would classify itself as an omnivore and a carnivore, under the right circumstances, will eat a human. So I don't think they would be any different. I think that your run-of-the-mill average Sasquatch family, the average Sasquatch probably knows if I kill a hunter or I kill a hiker, a whole bunch of people are going to show up the next day. They're going to have helicopters and dogs and guns and binoculars and video equipment and everything else. So it's really bad news if I kill a hiker. So I don't think that they like to do it because I think they realize there are consequences.
They don't like to draw attention to themselves, basically.
Well, exactly. That's the last thing that they want. It seems to be their entire MO is all about hiding themselves. But it seems like some of the younger ones, or, you know, occasionally, like, you know, some people are jerks. It seems like you get some occasional Sasquatches that are just jerks, you know?
More aggressive, more, you know, out of line compared to the family. Okay, so one of the things that I've been studying along with big game hunting is stories of rogue animals. Rogue bears, rogue tigers, rogue lions that are man-eaters. And there's a lot of really cool stories. Even if you go on Wikipedia and look up man-eater. There's this one called the Shastwet tiger. It was in India. This tigress, it was a female tiger, in like an 18-month period, killed like 490 something people or something like that. It was like 480 or 400. It was over 450 people, this tigress. And it was literally every night going into a different village, dragging somebody out and eating them. And every night guys would run out there with their guns and flashlights and lanterns and torches, and they could not find this thing. And it was a big fear in the village because every night somebody would wake up, and somebody's kid, somebody's grandma, even full-grown men, somebody was gone. And you hear the same thing with bears. Apparently, there's a really famous story. I didn't know this, but apparently, Japan has grizzly bears or brown bears. I did not know they had brown bears, but I found this story. I guess it was in the 1940s or 1950s of this brown bear that killed a whole bunch of people in Japan, like a couple dozen people. And it basically picked up
humans as a food source.
Mhm.
And it's been well documented that bears do it, mountain lions do it, African lions do it. They see these animals typically do not have a taste for humans, but maybe they come across a dead body, or when they're young and they're starving and they're, because a lot of the mountain lion attacks, especially here in California, are young ones that are starving that try to attack a person, because the big ones don't want to deal with us. But yeah, you do get these rogues, and I would assume Sasquatch is the same way. We got to be very easy pickings for them, even compared to a deer that can run 20, 30 miles an hour, no problem. We're just a dumb hiker distracted by our phone, and probably have a backpack full of food, and we have poor eyesight compared to them. We have poor hearing compared to them. With our deodorant and everything else, they probably smell us from a mile away. So if they wanted to make us dinner, which I think some do, for one reason or another, I think it happens.
Yeah, actually, I have a podcast planned soon for talking about rogue animals and man-eaters and stuff like that. You're welcome back for that one if you want to talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's been something, not just Bigfoot, like I said, I've been looking into, and it's great. The wife's in bed. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting there on my phone reading about grizzly bear attacks and like tiger attacks, and it's very interesting.
They are very interesting. I mean, what goes on in their brain, what makes them do that is, and I don't know, this is probably not the same tiger now that we're on that subject, but there is a YouTube video, and this could be totally unrelated, but from what I saw in a caption, I don't know if it's true or not, there was a tiger, these guys were elephant hunting, they're on elephants hunting with rifles.
I think I saw this.
And a tiger is in the brush, which you can't see, and neither can they. And then all of a sudden you see a commotion, and this tiger jumps up and attacks this human, and it punctures his lung with its paw, almost kills him. And I assume they probably shot it and killed it then and there. I do not know. Maybe it ran away, but you saw a very aggressive tiger that was clearly pissed off. It 100% clear as day went for a kill. Out of nowhere. And we do know tigers will kill humans anytime they get the chance. You see the instance, and I believe it was what was it, India? I think at a park or something.
Yeah, I think it was India.
Where the chick gets out of her car and the tiger sneaks up behind and grabs her and drags her away.
Oh no, that one was China, I think.
Was it China? Okay.
I think so.
And it actually ended up killing the guy that came to help her friend. But animals do get aggressive, and maybe tigers and lions are different. They'll kill anything that basically moves, when they're hungry. But I do have a couple questions now. That one of them we just kind of answered, and it's from Dip Sauce. He asked how aggressive Bigfoots get, and we just went in depth about that, so we kind of answered that one. But that was something that, coming into this podcast, I had kind of wondered, because I didn't know. I mean, I knew that they would get defensive. I knew they would defend themselves. But you see these movies all the time, and I haven't seen them in a while. But I remember growing up. I don't know what it was called, but you see this, this group of friends go out to a cabin, and this family of huge Bigfoots, just goes throughout the night and takes one by one, and it's a horror movie. And they're breaking through windows, grabbing these people out, And I obviously don't think they're that aggressive, but I think that question was answered pretty well and in depth. So for Dip Sauce listening, I hope you got that one answered for you. We got another one from Blitz, and this one's we kind of touched on this one too. I think this one's more of a obvious one, but also for the people that don't know Bigfoot as well, this could be good insight. Do Bigfoot have children? And if they do they take care of them?
Yes and yes. It's a well-documented fact in nature that the more intelligent of a creature you get, like when you look at sea mammals, when you look at dolphins, you look at whales, and you look at bears to a lesser extent, and you look at primates and humans, which we don't know what Bigfoot is, but we know that they're somewhere in our family tree. Somewhere. I mean, they have 5 toes and 5 fingers, and they walk upright, and they have eyes in the same place. And, if you shaved a Sasquatch and you put him in a suit and put a hat on him and put sunglasses on him, you just think it was an enormously odd-looking man, I'm sure. So, safe to kind of assume what primitive humans, tribal humans, historically what humans have done and what apes have done. Yeah, they definitely do have kids, and they definitely do raise them. Because, like I was going to say, the two things that happen when you get a more intelligent creature: one, the gestation period increases, how long they're in the mother's stomach developing, and two, how well developed are they when they're born? Now, a human infant, kind of a primate infant, is very helpless. They have to have mom and dad defend them, and they spend years growing up with mom and dad. While they live long lives, they're highly intelligent, they have a lot of skills to learn. And if you look at something fairly primitive like a snake or some reptiles or birds, or even birds, still, like they're with them for a couple months. But you look at some other species like sea turtles and some other very primitive old species where they just dump their young and they're fully formed and ready to go. Or you look at a lot of prey species like deer and antelope where they're born within minutes, they can run fast enough to keep up with their herd. Now, these creatures are fairly low on the intelligence scale, and they come out very highly developed. So that's the two things you got to look for: is how helpless are they when they're born, and how long do you think it would take them before they were able to at least defend themselves and keep up and go. So I think with Sasquatch, it's very similar to like a human. You got to think that when they're teenagers, 14, 15, 16 years old, and they're growing and getting rambunctious, they probably get kicked out of the house to go find their own territory and make their own life. So yes, they definitely have kids, and I think they definitely raise them.
And if you want to check out some footage, which I think is genuine, I don't know what you guys think, but the Independence Day Bigfoot footage, it actually seems like you have a mother Bigfoot carrying an infant.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah,
I think we watched that on the podcast one time, or on the live stream, and that did seem pretty legit to me. And I'm one to call out, someone who has faked videos. I usually have a good eye for, hoax and stuff like that, CGI, whatnot. That one seems legitimate, and if it is a hoax, if it is fake somehow, it's way well
amazingly well done.
Well,
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have heard that is a hoax, the Independence Day film. But to be honest, I was fooled by it for years too. This was only recently that someone brought it to my attention that the filmmaker came out, and it was some kind of like college project type thing with CG with like CGI in a suit or something like that.
Actual, some kind of funded.
Yeah.
That
It was
actually well
yeah.
done.
It was somebody who knew what they're doing. What always found me odd on that video, the one thing that always made me question it was the kiss. As the mom Bigfoot scoops up the kid and gives the baby of what looks like a kiss. And I'm like, that's very human behavior. And I've never heard any reports. I've heard reports of baby Sasquatches and juvenile Sasquatches and moms. I've heard really out there wild stories of Sasquatches abducting human kids and treating them well and looking after them. I've never heard of a Bigfoot kissing anything. I've heard of them doing other things to other things and people sexually, but I've never ever heard a Bigfoot in any context give a kiss or a kiss is. I could be completely wrong. So the Independence Day film, that was the first, little red flag in my mind, was you see the Bigfoot pick up the baby and give him a kiss. But the thing is about that being an amateur video, I see 2019 Hollywood, blockbuster multi-million-dollar movies that look worse than that. Whoever made that costume and did CGI edits, I mean, that's a job.
Well, and this is kind of something that also interests me. I kind of like to get all of your opinions on this, because I'm kind of coming into this with a fan perspective. I know Bigfoot probably more than the typical person, but you guys know about Bigfoot way more than me, and so I find this really interesting. Does Bigfoot have natural predators?
Nope.
Oh, I would say not. No, absolutely not.
I'll let you guys go first.
Because you wouldn't think that, a grizzly bear or a mountain lion would mess with what would be probably, which kind of is another question I just got, and let's see if I can verify who this is from. The question was, how tall is Bigfoot? And I would assume it'd be, from everything I've heard, 7 feet in that area, that kind of, and that was from actually Sensei Josh 1337, how tall is Bigfoot? I'd kind of guess like in the 7-foot range, approximately, give or take. But that's a pretty big monster that is, probably going to be strong like a silverback gorilla in terms of, compared to a human, it's going to be massively strong.
Mm-hmm.
So, a grizzly bear.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll tell you right off the bat, real quick. We'll get it out of the way. They get much taller than 7 feet. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So even scarier. That's it. The only thing I could think of that would put up a fight would be a grizzly bear. A mama grizzly bear that's protecting her cubs, because that is a big, massive creature too. I mean, that probably outweighs a Bigfoot. I don't know if. It's hard to say that those two would interact or fight. I'm sure if they are in the same areas, it probably has happened. Maybe a Bigfoot, a younger Bigfoot, or, one gets lost and it wanders off too close, because bears will get super protective, of their young, especially the mama bears.
Right.
But, do you think there's any other cryptids? Let's talk about, do dogmen live in the same areas as Bigfoots, do we think? I mean, is there any evidence of that? And if they did, would they interact at all, or would they have any,
Oh, absolutely, they would. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, I think that I'm gonna say something controversial. I think that a dogman's probably just about the only thing in the woods that would stand a chance against a Bigfoot.
No, there are bigger, worse things.
You think
okay,
so?
Well, yeah,
Humans.
and to go back and answer your questions, I read a really good book recently. I read it a long time ago and I picked it up again. It's called Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidances by Stephen Herrero. He's a PhD doctor. And like I said, I really looked into this dangerous game hunting. I also have a big tactical background too, which is and tactical means man on man. You're fighting another man, which is a lot different than hunting, which is a lot different than dangerous game. And you got to kind of think tactically. You got to think like you're hunting dangerous game, but tactically with Bigfoot. But anyway, they said the average female brown bear in North America, with the exception of Kodiak Island, because they get exceptionally huge in Kodiak, but we're talking mainland Alaska, Montana, those areas that you can currently, like Yellowstone National Park, Glacier National Park, Banff, parts of Canada, places where you can currently go see a grizzly bear. The females only get 300 or 400 pounds at the most. They don't get very big. Now you're talking 300 pounds of ferocious, run 35 miles an hour for an hour straight, pure muscle. You don't want to mess with that 300 pounds of bears. But I mean, I'm 5'10", 230 pounds. I'm not that far off of the weight of a grizzly bear, but barehanded, I stand no chance. That being said, natural predator, I think if you had a very young, a couple-year-old Sasquatch, and its mom died of an infection or a battle or old age, or it broke its leg and got sepsis and died, and you have a very young Bigfoot wandering around, I could see a mountain lion or a bear or a pack of wolves or something taking out a small one as far as natural predators. But if you want to get into the whole Bigfoot, dogman, and maybe some other things that are in the woods that can hunt a Bigfoot, that's a whole nother big story that if you want to get into it, we can.
Are you referring to the mountain giants?
Referring to mountain giants, referring to some other things that people see in the woods that are really fantastic. But if you're going to open the door to cryptozoology, if you're going to say exist, and then you're going to take the leap of faith and say a dogman exists, and then you're going to go from there and say, well, what else exists? Are thunderbirds real? What about these mountain giants, these things that are 15, 20, 25 feet tall and look more like a human being with rough clothes and red hair and big teeth poking out, that live in the very remote regions of Alaska and Montana? And where Bigfoot would tip over a car, these things would put a boulder the size of a Volkswagen on top of a cabin, outlandishly huge, but people see them. And so when you want to talk about another cryptid predator for a Sasquatch, I mean, I suppose it's possible. I think the most common one would probably be, like you guys were saying, would be is certainly going to compete over resources. It's going to be like wolves and bears do in North America, or hyenas and lions, or leopards and lions, or monkeys and gorillas, or monkeys and chimpanzees chimpanzees have a lot of that relationship. As soon as you get to, or bobcats and coyotes is the very classic Native American one. As soon as you get to apex predators or near the top of the food chain, predators competing over a resource, you're going to have those interactions. Now, I don't picture a Bigfoot abduct a baby dog man, but I could totally see one of these voracious dog mans. If they smell a fresh newborn, when people give birth, there's a lot of blood and guts and everything else that comes out and all that stuff. If a mom Bigfoot's completely exhausted and just gave birth and there's all this blood and everything else around, and there's a savage dog man around it, I wouldn't put it past one of them to be brought in by that, especially when the mom's very vulnerable. And in that case, you better hope you have a good family unit around. It's very brutal out in nature.
Well, and I think to tie into that point, you'll see with alpha predators, you got a large mountain lion, you got a large grizzly. There are often documented cases and videos on the internet where these two alpha predators will meet and they'll clash. They'll fight a little bit, but they'll kind of back off and recognize each other as a threat to each other. And one doesn't really necessarily think it's, they'll kind of back off and go their separate ways. They'll clash a little bit, they'll kind of scuff around, but they'll kind of go their separate ways because they recognize each other as threats and dangers to themselves. So they kind of go off.
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah, and so you'll see that in nature with animals a lot, and it could be the same with dogmen and Bigfoot, or just Bigfoot and grizzlies, or whatever the case is that they would encounter. They might not be wanting a fight, but obviously when you have children involved, they're young, sometimes you're going to get more aggressive, and you're going to have to do what you got to do to protect them.
Well, risking injury in the wild is stupid. And you see pretty much any predators fight, they always seem to back off of each other. But like you were saying, when it comes down to family and territory and stuff like that, there probably have been, or there most definitely have been times when fights have gone down in the wild that we could only wish to see.
Well, and I was going to say, it kind of seemed like the biggest threat to a Bigfoot is themselves, within the family. Maybe a fight breaks loose and one of the young gets trampled, or like you see it with a pack of gorillas a lot of times. One gets kind of counted out and they don't like it. And I'm not saying that this would happen with Bigfoots. Maybe they're more intelligent, but you'll see with apes, and they'll kind of kill one just because they don't like it or whatever the case is, but they'll rip it apart. Or a baby or a young infant will get trampled in the midst of a scuffle because they have their issues in the family or whatever, and then maybe that could be their biggest thing is that they have to worry about. It's just themselves.
Have you guys seen the YouTube videos? I believe it was National Geographic. There's things on it about the warrior chimpanzees, the warrior society. And since Jane Goodall, they've always thought of chimpanzees as being kind of lazy fruit eaters, but they figured out that they do eat meat. And in the last 10 years, they've documented the same groups that they've been studying for 30 or 40 or 50 years. All of a sudden, in the last 10 or 15 years, it's like the apes are evolving before our eyes. It's really bizarre. They've started eating more meat. They'll go out and hunt down like Colobus monkeys and other monkeys, and eat them. And they'll all get up. All the males will get in a line, 20 or 30 of them. They'll go off to the next little patch of jungle and get another troop of another troop of chimpanzees, and they'll battle and fight, and it is horrific. They tear the other ones apart and they eat them. Like, you see this chimpanzee and its death thrall screaming as he's being eaten alive and pulled apart, and this one's handing a hand and a foot, and everybody go eat the alpha of this other clan, and it is absolutely brutal. So yeah, like what you're saying, I think in a family unit, the Bigfoots, I'm sure it happens. Everybody has an a-hole uncle or an a-hole cousin or somebody, everybody has those in your family. That would escalate to fights or whatever, or maybe an uncle's trying to mate with one of your young ones or something, and there's going to be problems. But like you're saying, I think it would be from other troops or other groups or other families, other clans, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, definitely. I think the competition from other Bigfoot clans, especially over females and feeding rights, and then I know there's a lot of stories, native stories about the dogman, about how Bigfoot would stay on one side of like a woods and the dogman would stay on another, and humans would be on yet another, and they would kind of form these pieces with each other. And then if something would disrupt that, if a a warrior wandered into the wrong area, or a young Bigfoot wandered into a human area or a dogman area, and it would be chaos. And yeah, I mean, nature is a very brutal thing, very brutal.
It's scary. I mean, I definitely I think we probably saw the same video when you were talking about the chimpanzees, how they would hunt down. The video was a documentary where they went into the, whatever part of the world it was, I can't remember for sure, but they were studying these animals, and they would, for whatever reason, I can't remember if these lemur monkeys were in their territory, or they were just feeling aggressive that day, but they climbed up in the trees and yanked them out, and they got one, and they were literally snapping its bones in half and just eating it alive. I mean, the monkey was still alive, and they were doing it just out of rage, and they had already beaten up one of their own. I mean, to the point where it was almost dead, and it had escaped barely. But and I got to assume that Bigfoots have some of those characteristics, those similarities in chimpanzees in a way.
Well, what was very fascinating about one of those chimpanzee videos is there was a big older alpha male, and it was 2 or 3 of the younger males got together and took out this alpha male. Now, the alpha, the older one, you could see it was gray in his face. He could likely beat up any one of these guys on one, but it was like 3 or 4, a good number of these younger males had enough of this guy, and these killer chimpanzees, and they went in there and they just tore him apart, and they like got it on film. It was National Geographic, like blood running out of his mouth, literally yanking and tearing and biting and clawing this old chimpanzee apart so they could take over. It was your classic like nation political move, but done in a very brutal, public, animalistic way. And it's very interesting when you look at chimpanzees, that the complex society that they have, but also the brutality that they can have. And then it's scary because it reminds you a lot of, like humans.
Oh yeah. Yep. And I almost wonder if Bigfoots are, and I would be led to believe that they are more intelligent than chimpanzees. Maybe they have less, aggressive tendencies, to where the rage and savageness isn't necessarily as prominent in their family as maybe a chimpanzee. So maybe they're just more intelligent, and and I'm sure there are fights that break out. I'm sure that they have scuffles, like any, animal. You could go back to any animal in the world, and they all kind of go at it, but including humans. But it would seem that they would, be more intelligent, so maybe they wouldn't be as, savage.
Well, I would say yes, I do agree with you. I feel like this is getting into kind of the wooer a little bit more than these are just great apes in the woods, but it almost seems like that they have some kind of a higher command or a standing order, that your very first and foremost job is to keep a low key, away from people and not draw attention. And then it kind of seems to be secondary, live your lives and do your social thing, and all the other stuff is with Bigfoot. But yeah, but on the other hand, you say they're more intelligent, but humans are some of the most brutal species on the planet. And we're much more intelligent than a chimpanzee.
Yep.
There's horrible things happen every single day in the news, and horrible people get elected to political positions. Horrible people work in law enforcement. Horrible people join the military and hold all sorts of ranks, and but a lot of good people too. The thing is, there's more good people than bad people, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think Bigfoot's, not necessarily that they're like, oh, human, I would kill you and eat you in a second if it didn't cause so much trouble,
Right.
Or, oh, human, I would love to go and scare the crap out of all these campers and get them to never come back. But they might come back with guns, so I'm going to leave them alone. It's one of those things where, you meet the old surly dude in real life who's like, I'd kill you all right now if I couldn't go to, but I don't want to go to jail, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like the only thing that's keeping them from doing what they want to do is some kind of law or larger consequence. But if they had the chance and they knew there wasn't, they would do it. And I think that's a lot of it with Bigfoot. And I think with Bigfoot, getting away from the violence part of it, is we're kind of their entertainment. I mean, they got to wonder, like, they're playing music, they're building a fire, they're roasting these strange little white things over a fire, they're strange little processed tubes of meat they're roasting over a fire, and they're they're farting and drinking out of these strange little cans, and they're doing this in the middle of the woods, and they come out every so often and do this. What the hell are these humans doing? Or, hey, this old lady has a house at the edge of the forest, and it's really great to watch her TV, watch her talk on the phone, watch her do this. She has fire on the stove in her kitchen. We are just absolutely fascinating to these things because they don't have TVs, they don't have internets, they don't have cell phones. So I think a lot of just plain old curiosity is what draws them into us. And I think sometimes that attention can go the other way as well.
I think that's very interesting because that actually just reminded me. And Dakota and Ryan, I know you were both there for one of these streams, but on one of my live streams, we played a video, and I'm sure you've seen it, Matt. But it's I can't remember if it was a man or woman, but they're recording from inside one of the rooms in their house, and you see what appears to be a Bigfoot peering in the window at them for a brief second before it steps down, and the guy goes outside the next day and kind of shows you how high up that window was and where this Bigfoot would have been standing and how tall it would have been. And so it's really creepy because you can see its eyes, the glow of its eyes peering through the window, and it just gave me chills watching that because that was definitely creepy. But it was, that kind of was what you're talking about. It's just curious to see what the guy was doing, looking through the window, and, it wasn't being aggressive. It was just kind of checking them out,
I want to tell you my favorite.
Backtracking to what you said.
Sure.
Oh, I was just going to say, backtracking to what you said about the higher order keeping them hidden, and you could attribute that to the woo, as they call it. But honestly, just look at pumas. In my opinion, pumas are probably in most, if not all, of the lower 48, and we don't know that they're there because they survive by staying hidden. So even if it's not some higher power keeping these Bigfoot in line, it could just be survival is what keeps them hidden.
Right. Well, yeah, you're exactly 100% right. They know that humans are trouble and everything else. And what's really interesting about mountain lions, how you're saying the footage of the birds facing off with each other? You got to remember, do any of you guys have house cats or grew up with cats?
Oh yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
I've got 2 cats of my own. They're worthless. I love them, but they're worthless. And take your average 10-pound house cat, puffed up and they're fluffed up and and they have their claws. Do you want to pick that cat up? Do you want to get anywhere near that house cat at 10 pounds?
Oh,
I mean, it's a 10-pound house cat. You could literally drop kick it.
Yep.
But think of the most pissed off house cat with those fangs and those little teeth and those claws. You don't want to go near that thing.
Oh no.
Now, upscale. Now, and like, I'm serious. I mean, I like rescued like stray kittens before that have bitten my fingers and laid them open to where I had to get stitches. And we're talking like an 8-week-old kitten has bitten me that hard.
Oh, they're
so you think of a
blades.
full pit. Just think of a pissed off 10-pound house cat. It'll claw and scratch and bite, and they're so fast, and they'll strike, and you don't even know how to pick up this thing, and they're all puffed up and they're nasty. Now multiply that by 20-pound mountain lion with claws that are a couple inches long and teeth that are a couple inches long. Pure muscle. No, thank you. That's why a 200-pound or even 150-pound mountain lion can back down a 600-pound bear. Because the bear's like, you and me with the house cat. He's like, I don't want to deal with that,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, because they're very heavy bodied and they have powerful jaws. Mountain lions are very quick and cunning, but they're actually relatively light bodied. People kill mountain lions with 22s because their body itself is relatively thin. They don't have a thick skin. They don't have particularly thick hides or muscle to get through. But what makes them so deadly is their speed and
their
claws
precision,
and
their
what
kind of
they
ability to just go for the neck and just clamp down.
Oh yeah, and they're so fast, and those claws and pain. They look like death on 4 legs. And I've had a couple close mountain lion encounters. One, I was out off-roading here in the mountains not too far from me, and I had a couple people with me, and we stopped in the middle of the woods on this remote mountain trail, and I got out to go pee, and I parked my truck right in the middle of this big bush, and this bush was probably like the size of a Suburban turned sideways. And I got out, peed on this bush, got back in the car. My other friends got back in the car. As soon as I started up the car, the other side of the bush I was peeing on, this mountain lion runs across the road. Didn't hear it, didn't see it. It was probably watching me pee. It was probably 10 feet from me. Like I said, it was probably 2 steps and an outreach arm from me. It was that close. And I had no idea. My other friends had no idea. We all just stopped in the middle of the woods, found a bush and peed, you know? And it was just like, holy crap, how close was that thing? Because we got out and did our business. I think we got some waters and stretched our legs and looked around just a couple minutes. Got back in the truck where it stood, which was parked right next to the bush I peed, and this thing ran. It took like a couple steps, kind of looked at us from behind a bush, and then ran across the road. And we're like, holy crap. That thing could have had me when I had my, when I was taking a leak, And
that would be the most embarrassing way to die, to be honest.
Well, if anybody knows me personally, they know that that's probably exactly how I'm going to die.
Well, and on the topic of mountain lions, you see the case of the Colorado man that killed a mountain lion with his bare hands by strangling it.
Oh yeah,
and he kind of used his foot on the neck or whatever, I think, or his forearm. Turns out that was just a cub, and it still about killed him. And you're talking about all these predators that are just ferocious and stuff like that. But I highly doubt, and I know that you're all in agreement with this, but I highly doubt a mountain lion, a full-size, biggest mountain lion you can think of, would ever target something like a Bigfoot, because it would recognize that it's too big. It's not gonna, they don't hunt things that, they're kind of smart with how they hunt. They hunt deer, rabbits, mid-sized animals, something that's their size or smaller.
Right.
They would likely never target something that massive,
Oh yeah, yeah, especially a full-grown or even an adolescent one. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like I said, if there was a very young one, like a couple-year-old equivalent of like a toddler Bigfoot separated from its mother out there,
Yeah, like kind of helpless
maybe,
in a way.
But yeah, they're maybe Bigfoot keeps them as house cats. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, that would be badass. Because I've seen where they'll attack children, human children that are out playing in the yard. There's cases where they have dragged off kids and killed them, and they'll attack them because they recognize it as a small prey. I've seen videos where wolves and mountain lions get into it. Now, obviously, a mountain lion will never take on a pack of wolves because the wolves will win in numbers. But a full-grown alpha, wolf versus a full-grown mountain lion, the mountain lion's going to win 10 out of 10 times. And there are videos, especially one in particular, where you see the mountain lion curl up in a ditch with a wolf, and it has the wolf's neck broken completely. Now, this is not wolves. I think a lot of people underestimate the size of wolves. They think of like a German Shepherd or something like that.
No, they get big.
They are massive.
Really
they are
big.
At least 2 to 3, maybe even 4 times the size of a dog. Your average dog. They're massive creatures, and not that mountain lions are smaller, but they're probably taller than a mountain lion. And I'm not sure for it to be exact, but they're big, and a mountain lion will easily shred them because they're just instinct killers, where a dog is more of like bite and tear. But Bigfoot definitely has predators that he would have to contend with. Not that they would be hunting him necessarily, but it's definitely dangerous to be a cub, especially as a Bigfoot cub or an infant.
Well, what you were saying with the mountain lion and the wolf, I think you're not giving wolves enough credit. When wolves were first reintroduced to Yellowstone, mountain lions were getting killed left and right by them because the mountain lions, they had no idea what they were up against, and then the wolves would tear them apart like they were nothing.
Well, they hadn't seen them before. Yeah.
Well, and I think, again, wolves will always win in packs. I just don't think a wolf would win one-on-one just based on the pure instinct level of a cat, which is always go for the neck and break its neck, and the jaw power of a cat is usually 10 times that of, well, not 10 times, but wolves have strong jaws as well, but they don't latch for the neck, and of course you can still die of it gets a lucky cut or severs an artery or something like that, but
infections or whatever.
Yeah, but usually a mountain lion 1v1 will win, but a pack of wolves obviously would shred pretty much. They kill moose, which are 10 times their size.
Yeah. So there's a really interesting documentary. I think you might be able to still find it on Netflix, and it was talking specifically about wolves and mountain lion. Now, a lot of people are listening like, what does this have to do with Bigfoot? You'll find that if you're trying to research pure Bigfoot behavior through encounters and everything else, that there's a certain amount of behaviors that are witnessed that need interpretation. And I find that looking at other predators, looking at other primates and humans, like I said, dangerous game, tactical hunting, you got to kind of look at it all. And that kind of helps you form hypotheses. Now, this documentary I saw was talking about the relationships of wolves and mountain lions. In Yellowstone National Park in the late 90s, when they reintroduced wolves, the wolves that were traditionally in Yellowstone only got 60 or 70 pounds. The ones that they reintroduced were from Canada, and they got 120, 130, 150 pounds. Very big species. Because the wolves they brought in from north, there's something called the Bergman's Rule, where the higher north you go in latitude, the bigger the animals get. So they brought in these wolves from Canada that they weren't expecting them. And historically, they don't think wolves took out bison. They don't think historically that wolves took out moose in Yellowstone National Park. They stuck to deer and maybe some elk. While these big giant wolves that they brought in from Canada, like super wolves, and the mountain lions, they'd never seen a wolf before. They're used to coyotes, which the coyote populations have gone down quite a bit because they take it into shorts anytime there's wolves around. But this documentary is talking about how in Yellowstone National Park, the wolves are always dominant over the mountain lions. But outside of the park, like in eastern Idaho and in parts of Montana, where they've had wolves historically, the wolves that are actually there and have always been there, they are submissive to the mountain lions because the wolf packs are smaller. They're 3 or 4 per pack, and the wolves are 50, 60, 70 pounds. They're not 150-pound wolves. And these wolves do very poorly, where a full-grown mountain lion will go in there, especially a big male, and scare them off a kill. Versus in Yellowstone National Park, where they have these much larger wolves and packs of up to 30 of them. Nothing can compete with that. I mean, hell, wolves chase grizzly bears off of hills in Yellowstone National Park. And there's also this whole conjecture that all over Montana and Wyoming, because most of Yellowstone National Park is in Wyoming, parts of Idaho and Montana, that the hills around there and even parts of Yellowstone, people still, even before the introduction, that way back in the hills, they were already there. So the introduction, quote unquote, was they took basically Canadian wolves and reintroduced them, or introduced them to Yellowstone, and they were, like I said, a lot bigger and more aggressive and a lot more cold adapted than the wolves that were there previously. So that's why the wolves have done very well for themselves in Sequoia National Park, which is kind of like, if you want to bring it back to Sasquatch, if there's a section of woods that maybe typically have Sasquatch, or maybe had a Sasquatch clan that died out, or the food resources dried up due to drought for a few years and the Sasquatch moved on or left that area, and then say a new group or people or the Sasquatch move back to an area, you got to think this is a big shock to an ecosystem having a Sasquatch in there. And that's why I think it's really fascinating when you study wolves and mountain lions and bears and tigers and primates and early humans, and you look at some of the uncontacted tribes out there and how they run their groups. And then you can kind of all piece together, along with all the hundreds of eyewitness reports, other researchers like myself, and you kind of just paints this picture of this creature that, is really something far beyond this, something that's so efficient, so strong, that gets huge, that's so stealthy. It almost seems unbelievable. And I think that's why part of the reason why people have such a hard time believing it is they really are the Superman of the woods. They really are the king of the mountain, Like, I don't care how big a gun you are, how big a bear you are, this mother effer's out there, You're talking at the upper range, 10, 11, 12 feet tall, 1,1200 pounds, 4.5, 5 foot across at the shoulders. Make Andre the Giant look like a pipsqueak, like Brock Lesnar blown up 5 times, covered in hair and pissed off, So, I mean, it's like, of course these things are the absolute masters of their environment.
So, I have an interesting question here from Colton Jondal on Twitter, or on Discord, for Matt. Do you think, and this could be to Ryan and the rest of us as well, do you think some cryptids are just mutated animals, or he's got a worded weird. Do you think some cryptids are just mutated animals, or only their genes would rarely pass on to another generation? If that makes sense. So are they mutated animals, or only does their genes, or do their genes rarely pass on to another generation? Do they kind of, evolve, basically?
Do you want me to answer that, or you want Ryan?
Kind of.
to
If both you, Ryan, and Dakota could answer that, just kind of all your opinions on it, so the audience can kind of get all your takes on it.
I'll
sorry.
go ahead and add to this. That was fine. But a lot of people they seem to classify dogmen as some sort of mutated wolf, and that's far out of the reach of what a mutation can do, from what I know, and it definitely has to be a complete separate, different species. For a wolf to have a couple new genes introduced, and then suddenly it's 700 pounds standing on its hind legs with yellow glowing eyes screaming at the sky. That's just far beyond the range of what a mutation can do. So I don't think most cryptids can be attributed to just a mutation in a species.
Yeah, I would generally agree. When you get into some of these, especially like the carnivorous varieties of Bigfoot, the Gugwe variety that seems to have a snout like a baboon, absolutely ferocious varieties. It seems like you're getting into beyond natural selection, beyond evolution, into flat out tampering. And I don't know which way he was trying to go with this question. Yeah, I do believe that maybe Sasquatches in remote areas probably get inbred enough to where they're sterile or have a lot of health problems and then die out. But I don't think there's any natural amount of evolution in any part of the planet under any circumstances that's going to produce a 600 or 700 pound wolf that walks on its hind legs most of the time. So yes, I would generally agree with you there. And I think that's what's so unsettling about a dog man is it's walking like a human dog man. That's what's just so creepy about it. Versus, we think of apes, we think of caveman and Australopithecus and our early modern ancestors, and with Bigfoot, scary enough, and you kind of think, well, yeah, but there are other hominids and hominoids that walk on hind legs, but an upright walking dog, that's out there.
And while we're on the topic, you were saying tampering, and a lot of people seem to think that these what they're calling fatheads or soldier type dogmen are tampered with by the government to create these sort of super soldier weapons, and they're being released as a form of training or testing or something like that. And what's your take on all that and the government involvement with cryptids and maybe even cover-ups?
Well, I will tell you that I think that I don't necessarily know if it's our government. Okay, this is the reason why I'm hesitant to say is there are a lot of historical encounters of dogman going way, way back. Native Americans talking about them, other continents all over the world, people talking about dogman. And even historical accounts, like I did a video a while back about St. Christopher. Are you guys familiar with who St. Christopher is, or any of you guys religious?
The cynocephali that carried the little boy across the river that turned out to be Jesus. Yep, I've heard the story.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in most modern Catholic Church depictions, St. Christopher is just a regular dude who, like you said, he's the patron saint of travelers because he was a wanderer. But in many depictions, he has a dog head. And if you look in that time frame, 2,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, there are even reports of knights in the Knights Templar's head. There are many reports of all through history of these people. Now, what's very curious is they seem to have like a human body, but they have like a dog's head, versus a lot of the modern werewolf where they're more like an upright walking wolf. But it seems like they're kind of all over the place in their depiction. But yeah, as far as genetic engineering, I think that dogman has to be designed by something, whether it's some ancient civilization long ago that maybe we don't know the name of. And when it comes to our modern government, I do believe that they do track Sasquatch. They do track dogmen. I think that they know that they're dangerous. I do think that they've captured them and shipped them. I mean, even just technology that is known, they can track human beings through on satellites, and they can tell the size and mass of a person. They can tell if it's a 200-pound man or 800-pound man. And so they can track Sasquatch through the jungles and trees and everything else. using satellites and drones and all that other kind of stuff. So I think the government has a hand in it. Maybe there's some genetic manipulation, but if you were the government that knew around the world there are these creatures that are for all intents and purposes a werewolf, purebred killing machines, yeah, I think every military in the world would be interested in at least knowing what they are and how they got there. As far as them tagging and releasing them or genetically modifying them, it very well could be. But as far as them being a modern creation, there's a lot of historical accounts. So, yeah, I think they've been around a long time. Short answer is they've been around a long time. Does our modern government probably manipulate them and track them? I do think so. To what extent, I'm really not sure.
So now I kind of want to wrap up the show in the last, 15, 20 minutes and kind of have this debate here. Or not debate. I want to kind of start with Ryan here, and we can work down to Dakota and then finish it with Matt here. And this is for more of the people watching. You might be asking yourself, well, what if I'm walking down a trail late at night or in the middle of the day, whatever, and I have a gun, I have a knife, maybe I don't have anything at all, and I encounter a Bigfoot. What should I do? How do I defend myself in certain scenarios, various scenarios? Maybe it's a little bit aggressive, maybe it's not. What do you do in either scenario? Ryan, if you could start out with that and kind of answer and explain in your experience what you would do, because you've came face to face or close to, cryptids before, so you kind of have an experience with this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In my case, it was more or less my mannerisms, and I think avoiding eye contact, and not screaming or shouting or waving my hands about like a madman. So I think really how you behave dictates how they behave. You don't want to do anything rash or crazy because they'll react in kind. So if you can keep your calm and, just kind of keep a calm presence more or less and not act irrationally, you'll be okay. So.
And I'll carry off of that. In going into the woods in general, even if you're not thinking about cryptids or unverified species or anything like that, going into the woods it's dangerous. You don't know what's out there. If people might say there's no black bears in the woods near you, or there's no mountain lions in the woods near you, there might be. So if you legally can, I'd say always carry a gun in the woods with you, just for your own safety. Mm-hmm. But if you come face to face with something that you don't recognize, like maybe an 8-foot tall wolf or an 11-foot tall ape creature, probably not the best idea to shoot your 9mm at it. Probably not. And I know Matt has some opinions on what guns he thinks is best for Bigfoot defense, and I've seen his videos. He seems to really like the AK-47. So I'll pass that to you, and I'll let you take that.
Okay, well, first off, if you're in the scenario that you described, there's two things you absolutely should not do. One, I think Ryan brought that up right away, is don't make eye contact, because in a lot of species, it's not just ape species, eye contact is considered an aggression. I don't know why you would, but you don't want to. Teeth would be a very bad idea, and there's a lot of Bigfoot encounters of people. Some people just kind of wince and nervous smile, and that'll very much set off, because when you're showing your teeth, you're trying to show them how bad you are. And I don't care who you are, you don't have teeth like a Bigfoot, or even in one. So I think the best thing you could do, and this is with or with not, you're carrying a 9mm or a 44 Magnum like I carry, or an AK-47 or 30-06 or whatever's on you. That's regardless at that point. If you come across the woods and say you interrupted a Sasquatch in the middle of its hunt, you can, you just kind of throw your hands up, back away slowly, talk calmly, just like you would with a bear. Whoa, okay, I mean no harm. Just kind of throw your arms up, like stop, and if you can, your heart's going to be beating out of your chest. You're going to get the body alarm response, which is where all the blood draws out of your fingers and your toes and your appendages, and you're going to develop that tunnel vision. But you need to fight that a little bit, have a little bit of situational awareness, because the last thing you want to do is trip and fall in a situation to make any sudden movements. But I would just calmly turn my head left and right, slowly turn my head left and right, look around, see if there's anything else around. keep the Sasquatch in your peripheral vision, keep an eye on it, maybe not make direct contact, and then just slowly back out and leave. And if you can turn a corner or get around an edge, I would keep that as a very brisk, fast walk. You ever see those dorky power walkers on the side of the road? I would be doing a power walk. If you go into a full sprint, you might trigger something, and you don't want that. But I would definitely get out of there as fast as you could. If you're in a vehicle, or you're on your 600cc Honda dirt bike, floor the bitch. Get out of there.
Yeah.
Back away, get a little bit away, say you're not in any kind of harm. Think clearly, take a big deep breath. Don't go for your gun. Don't unsnap your holster. Don't do anything like that. Make yourself keenly aware of where that is. Hopefully you've trained and practiced your draw stroke, how accurately you can shoot, what type of gun is it, all that kind of stuff. But really, you're just going to focus on the threat, and you're going to try to defuse the threat, and you're going to back away, and you're going to get out of there. And as soon as you get to your car, you're going to want to change your underwear because they're going to have poop in them. And you're going to want to call me or Sasquatch Chronicles and share your story. And that's kind of if you have a typical encounter. You come around a corner hiking, and this thing's in the middle of the trail, and it's gritting its teeth, and it's snarling, and it has this look like, go the hell away or die. I think you need to listen to that and say, have a nice day, Mr. Bigfoot, and back away and leave, even if you are well armed. So yeah, if you want to get into protection, you made a joke about a 9mm, and I completely understand what you're saying, but I feel if you get, there are brands out there that make suitable rounds. And when I say suitable for a 9mm, I think when you're talking anything from 9mm on up to like 44 Magnum and a handgun round, even 223, even a 308 for that matter, any kind of a larger caliber, middle of the road rifle, you're not going to kill one of these things with a chest shot, more than likely. If you had to defend your life, you'd have to hit it in the head or the neck. You'd have to hit it in the nape of the neck. I don't know how you do it, but under the armpit, or maybe even in the groin or crotch or hip area, if you have a powerful enough gun to try to break a hip or something. Preferably something semi-automatic or bolt action that you can crank off, or pump action. And you just keep loading, you just keep dumping rounds into it as you were backing up. And that's only if it was charging at me, it picked up a loved one, it's throwing rocks, it's trying to break into my house. My wife just went into the outhouse at the National Forest Service station, and it's trying to break into the outhouse to abduct my wife. It's trying to pick me up. It's charging at me, and I know I can't outrun it, or there's nothing I'm going to do. So it's going to be head. You basically have to either hit it in the brainstem, which is in the very back of the skull, or somewhere in the spinal column. This is true on humans. The only instant off switch on a human is the brain cortex, the brain stem at the very back of the skull, and that spinal column. Even a brain shot, they can live for a couple seconds afterward. And even if you could explode its heart with magic, it can still run for 15 to 20 seconds after its heart explodes, just with the adrenaline and blood in its body. So trying to shoot one is a very daunting task. But if you have to, do it. The other thing I recommend to people, especially because a lot of people don't like guns, and I don't blame them, everybody has their beliefs, is bear spray. Have any of you guys ever been pepper sprayed, like regular police pepper spray?
I have actually had pepper spray in my face.
What did you think?
It burned. It was snot, tears, coughing. I mean, it was horrible.
Now, if you think of bear spray is 5 to 10 to 20 times more powerful than normal pepper spray, with a lot higher velocity and a lot more amount of it. I recommend, you carry bear spray, not regular pepper spray. I mean, if one's picking you up and you could shoot it in its eyes, but bear spray, they come in those big containers, they shoot 15, 20 feet. If there's a Sasquatch trying to carry off my wife or break into a house, or it's got a rock in its hand and it's charging at me, trying to hit me over the head, and I just dump a can of pepper spray, or say I'm holed up in a cabin, and the thing's breaking windows and trying to open doorknobs, and it's peeking its head through open windows, and I just blast that the mother effer, with a big blast of pepper spray. They hate that shit. They're going to run off. They're going to go the other way, along with anything.
So what you're saying
is
what I shouldn't do is basically, we're standing off with each other, with me and a Bigfoot, and what you're saying is I shouldn't crack a cold beer over my face and chug it, and then throw it down on the ground and charge the fucker. You're saying I shouldn't do that.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. And it's when you crack 2 beers and you chug them, you throw them on the ground, you flip them off, you pull out your 2 Twix guns, lefty and righty, and you start blazing away. But this is after somehow you lit a Marlboro. Yeah, if you want to do that, let me know how it turns out, or better yet, I'll come investigate the aftermath.
You see, that's why I never go in the woods without a tank of kerosene, because if I come across a Bigfoot, it's going to be an action movie scene, and there's no way getting around that.
You're going to
be
take a full
entertaining for
advantage
both
of the
of us.
situation and give everything that, My question is, and how do they tame these Bigfoots to be in beef jerky commercials? I mean, how do they do it? I just want to know.
Well, beef jerky is delicious.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you can pretty much tame anything with it, huh?
Show up with like a leg of lamb, a deer. I don't know. You get somebody to dress up as a nice female Sasquatch for them, and they'll probably do whatever you want. I think it'd be hilarious if you got Sasquatch drunk.
It would be.
My best friend in high school, he was 6'7", about 270, 280, giant monster of a dude.
Oh, almost as tall as Dill.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, and a football player, and then he started, he started lifting weights and getting all yoked out and everything. And back then, I was in good shape, so I could even hold my own, even being a foot shorter than him. But when he would get drunk, he'd grab you like by the back of the neck and shake you like a doll, and he would just like pick stuff up. And I'm just picturing that like times 5. Like a 9 foot tall, 750 pound Sasquatch just drank like 3 bottles of Jack Daniels and is like stumbling around the woods, knocking over cars, tipping
punching
over
trees
shit.
over, just like fucking fuck this tree, fucking knocks it over, just fucking.
Yeah, he's hungry. He's eating a full bag of Ruffles, bag and all, just.
He comes over
Gotta
to
go
some
to
campers in the
Taco Bell
campfire,
and
pushes
get
them all over, fucking
Yeah.
steals their fucking meat. And like,
Yeah.
this is my fucking meat, bitch. And don't ever say anything about this encounter, and they fucking walk off in the woods.
Yeah. You got to go to Del Taco and get him 50 tacos, and he's still hungry.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the problem, is we're dealing with sober Bigfoot. We've got all these trail cameras set up in the woods.
Yes.
We leave out a couple edibles, we're going to have Bigfoot taking selfies. We're going to have so much
Exactly.
evidence.
Fucking start
That's what
setting
we
up beer traps for these fucking Bigfoots. Give them some edible cookies, maybe some brownies, and watch these fuckers get high, drunk, and just tripping over themselves. Wandering into town. Fucking going to the local pub. Ordering some beers, and then we'll get some evidence of them. Finally, we'll get actual crystal clear, real footage.
I believe it. The what's that real cheap beer that's really like terrible?
Natural Light.
Steel Reserve.
I'm drinking right now, actually.
Yeah. Well, I will say I'm the classy one of the group. I'm actually drinking a glass of wine right now.
Okay.
I got the bottle gone. Because I always do these podcasts. I don't know if you guys. I always drink during the podcast. It's just kind of a habit.
Oh, same.
But yeah, what is it? The Steel Reserve High Gravity, the stuff that's like 8 or 9%.
Yeah. I'm drinking the Steel Reserve.
Like,
it's 8% shit beer, but it's 99 cents.
By the way, if you ever have a hangover with Steel Reserve, it is the worst. I don't know what it is.
Oh, I actually don't get hangovers anymore because I'm pretty accustomed to it. But yeah, I mean, the first time I drank it was it sucked. The headache was real.
Yeah, it's pretty rough the next day. But yeah, you just leave a 12-pack of that out there, and yeah, I think that would be really funny.
It would.
Okay, so here, kind of a funny story from another researcher.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So, you guys know who Caveman Razzie is?
I do not. No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. He's been on World Bigfoot Radio. He's kind of a fairly well-known Bigfoot researcher. He's Native American, I believe. And he lives in a very heavily wooded area, kind of at the edge of town, that just goes off in these real thick woods. And he's had a habituation with Bigfoot for many, many years. the fact that he drives home and he lives by himself. He drives home and he sees them all the time, and he keeps his window shut. Like, he'll be sitting there eating dinner and he glances over his shoulder and there's a Sasquatch staring at his like kitchen window, and he just kind of like rolls his eyes and go over and shuts the blinds, kind of a thing. He's very used to them being around. So one day, and he's really exhausted. It was a late night at work. It's all dark out. He comes inside. He pops a beer. He sits down on the couch. He turns on the TV. He goes and takes a leak and grabs something from the kitchen and sits back down. And he's watching TV. And all of a sudden he gets this feeling of like, God, I'm being like, I think they're here. I'm being watched. Well, he looks over his shoulder to the big mirror, to the big window that's behind him. Sasquatch standing there, like a big old giant Sasquatch, like a big old male. And he kind of slowly turns his head and he sees it. Well, the Sasquatch isn't watching him. It's watching his TV. And the Sasquatch is transfixed at his TV. And he's looking at the TV and he's looking at the Sasquatch and he's like, oh shit. And all of a sudden he says he got this very sinking feeling. He realized what he had on was Planet of the Apes, the most recent one with Mark Wahlberg. And he looked over at this Bigfoot and he sees the Bigfoot staring at this thing and he's got this perplexed look. And he's like, I could see the gears turning in the Bigfoot's eyes as these apes are running around chasing down humans with guns. And I'm just like, oh crap, I'm going to start Planet of the Apes. So he just kind of pretends like he doesn't see it. And he kind of changes the channel to something else. And he kind of gets up and he looks over and the Bigfoot kind of is looking around the house. And he pretends like he doesn't see him. And he kind of just reaches over and shuts the blinds. And he was just like, oh crap, I think I just started Planet of the Apes for real. The Bigfoot was watching the movie. God damn it.
God damn it. Now we're fucked. I mean, now we're just absolutely fucked. We're all going to die, basically.
So, I want to share that story with you guys.
So, to basically just kind of wrap up the show here, I just want to make sure that, Ryan, do you have any other closing comments or anything like that? We'll go down the line here with Dakota, and then we'll finish it with Matt, but Ryan, do you have anything that you wanted to add or any comments or anything like that?
No. I've just been sitting here enjoying what Matt and you guys are talking about.
It's interesting
very
stuff.
amusing.
It is.
Talking about a drunk Sasquatch, that would indeed be fun, my man. But yeah, very good stuff. Very, very good stuff.
Dakota?
I just think it's important that we get Dogman high.
I agree.
That's our next objective.
No, get him drunk off of Mad Dog 2020.
No, but we gotta cook up Dogman.
There you go.
That's.
He seems like more of a Four Loko
GoFundMe.
guy to me. So.
I don't know. Mad Dog 2020 will tear your day up, my friend.
Yeah, it will. Oh God, I remember it was a couple of years back. I had some buddies of mine up to my father-in-law's Sierra property, and it was me, my buddy John, my buddy Travis, and Garrett. And Garrett doesn't drink because he has epilepsy and he can't drink, otherwise it messes with him. Basically he has a seizure and he pisses himself and forgets who he is for 20 minutes. And if he's listening, he's completely fine with me saying that. Travis brought up, he's like, oh, I got this jar. It's moonshine. We're like, what? Because we're up there, we're all drinking beer and we're drinking. I was drinking beer. Travis had a couple beers, and I think John was drinking gin because he doesn't like. This is the 6'7" motherfucker, by the way, and he was drinking gin, and he drinks it by the bottle, and he's like, "Oh, it's apple pie moonshine." My cousin takes this moonshine, dumps it in this big pot. I guess a buddy of his brews it. He dumps it in a big pot. He throws cinnamon sticks and whole apples and all this stuff, and he cooks it in his big pot and then strains it and rebottles
Oh,
it.
no.
This moonshine tasted like liquid apple pie. It tasted so smooth, like not a trace of burn. It tasted like an apple pie milkshake.
Oh.
And we're like, this is moonshine. This is like 120 proof, something like that, 180 proof. I mean, it was like off the charts. And I don't know what happened that night. All I remember is we're at my father-in-law's place, and he has one of those 2-seat off-road golf carts, one of those Rhino things. And I just remember seeing my buddies climb into the golf cart, and another guy standing in the pickup bed of the golf cart, tearing off into the darkness, and romping around and crashing. I just remember the next day waking up, splitting headache. My friends are like groaning, and it hurts to go to the bathroom. And you look, and there's like, I don't know, like an inch left in the bottle of this goddamn moonshine jar. And I'm like, how much?
Was that your dude, where's my car moment?
Oh, God. And it was like, dude, where's my golf cart? And yeah. And I guess Travis and John had way more than me. I had a pretty good headache, but I took some ibuprofen and drank some water and kind of nutted up. And they were still laying in the living room on a couple of futons, and right off the porch is the living room at the cabin. So I grabbed my 308 rifle and put some earplugs in. We're both laying there in bed, and they kind of gotten up and we're kind of in bed, just quietly moaning. Just go boom, boom, boom. They just shoot up and they're just like, "Oh my God, what the hell's the matter with you?" And I'm just out there cackling away. And Garrett comes running out of the spare bedroom, and he's realized what's going on, and he's like, "Oh, Matt, you're such a dick. That's awesome." And I'm like, "Hey, boys, was that loud? Did that hurt your heads?" You know. So if you go Sasquatching with Mattsquatch, you can be a dick sometimes. But yeah. So
Nice.
Let's get
Very
Bigfoot
nice.
drunk. I'd like to party with him. So
That would be ideal.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Well, guys, it's been fun. I think we talked about a lot of great things tonight. I hope everyone listening, you kind of got insight onto some of the knowledge that Matt has, and he is a Bigfoot researcher and cryptid expert, and so is Ryan and Dakota. So I hope you guys were able to pick up a lot of information. You're probably like me, and you don't know as much, as these guys. So you're able to kind of pick up, bits and pieces of information, and especially when it comes to defense, because you never know when you encounter one, and now you kind of know what to do, what not to do, especially know what not to do. And so hopefully that helped you out, and hopefully you guys found this interesting. Matt, what shout out your Twitter and anything else you'd like the audience to follow you on.
Yes, I absolutely hate social media, but I'm on it just because of the YouTube. My YouTube channel is Mattsquatch Presents, like Sasquatch, but with M-A-T-T in front of Squatch. I'm on Twitter. I think it's Real Mattsquatch and Mattsquatch Presents on Instagram. Parting words, I will say, please stay safe in the woods. There's a lot of things we don't understand. By the way, I am not an expert. I am just a person who has an interest in this stuff, and I've been studying it for a long time. And if anybody's familiar with Missing 411 and a lot of things that people go missing in the woods, one of the most common factors is very few people who carry guns in the woods and who train with them and who are proficient go missing. Now, you cannot like guns, and you can have some political agenda against guns or not think Bigfoot is dangerous. That's fine. I get it. But people, what have you lost? There are bears, mountain lions, cougars, coyotes, bad people, drug runners, people abducting people, aliens, Sasquatch, dogmen, the Loveland frog, the Enfield horror, Mothman, everything you can possibly imagine out there, real or not real, imagined or otherwise. What have you lost by going prepared in the woods? Nothing. What have you gained? Possibly your life.
Yeah, if you run into
possibly
Mattsquatch in the woods, you better be prepared.
Better be prepared for a hug. Big sweaty guy, big sweaty fat guy hug. Just stay safe out there. The biggest tip I can get is 9mm, 40, 45, 357, 44, whatever your handgun preference is. Just shoot a good non-expanding ammo. Buffalo Bore makes good ammo. Lehigh Defense with their Extreme Penetrator. Hollow points are great on humans because they deposit a lot of energy, and humans are very thin-skinned, lightweight beings. But when you talk about bears, you talk about Sasquatch, they're very heavy-duty animals. You need a round that penetrates. Lehigh Defense Extreme Penetrators, Buffalo Bore, dangerous game line, Buffalo Bore. You find them online, Buffalo Bore. They also have cast lead, the flat-nosed bullets. They penetrate deep. They're very powerful. Even a 9mm, even a pocket 9mm with the properly loaded bullets to the neck and head and cranium of one of these creatures is definitely better than you trying to claw its eyes out with your bare hands. So just stay safe out there. Don't get tunnel vision. Don't get sucked into it, and stay safe in the woods.
That's some good advice right there, and I highly recommend y'all follow that. Don't get too cocky. Don't get too, look at me, I'm on Snapchat. Look at me being cool with my buddies. just don't do that. You'll probably get hurt or worse. But with that being said, I'll put the links to the, I'll display Ryan's Twitter, Dakota's Twitter, and my Twitter as well as the YouTube channel. So you guys can follow those links, go to those Twitters, and follow us there for some insightful tweets as well. So with that out of the way, guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I'll be live streaming soon again. I hope you guys had a good night, and I'll see you guys next time.